Okay. Hello, hello, hello. I've not done this in a while. Everything is askew. And I'm here with Cookie and Ferret. And I was asked to cover the Neil deGrasse Tyson interview on Diary of a CEO, although we never got to finish the last coverage of Neil when he was where he was on where was he on trigonometry, I believe, which is a pity. But the reason is mainly that I like to finish things with the people I started them with, and well, real life happens, and that means it's hard to get everyone together again, um, which is a pity. Maybe I should have just pushed things alone. Let me know in the comments if you think I should do that. The autism demands that I finish things; they never get out of my head otherwise. All right, Cookie, you wanted to cover this. Can you tell us why? We'll get to it in a second.
So, hello everyone. I was looking for YouTube podcasts as I like listening to podcasts while I do things very often, usually through YouTube. And I was scrolling through the related videos and I saw that Diary of a CEO interviewed Neil deGrasse Tyson. Um, with regards to what I think about Diary of a CEO, I think it's a very good podcast. Um, he's genuinely curious. He genuinely listens, and you get to learn a lot of things from his podcast. Neil deGrasse Tyson, however, leaving aside the fact that when I first heard about him, I was told that he's intellectually dishonest, and I saw part of the trigonometry interview, and there were some things that were well, I'm not sure how to translate the phrase from Hebrew, but look in the look in the previous video where we covered Neil deGrasse Tyson on trigonometry to understand more.
We didn't even get to the really juicy bits, which is a real pity.
Yeah,
I
but
did see
that's
some of
enough.
them, but yeah. Um,
Yeah, but that's enough to justify picking at this.
yeah. We didn't see him as that before the big woke came and flooded the world. Uh, Ferret, we have also a real scientist with us here. Hello, Ferret. What's your opinion?
Allegedly. Hello. So my opinion of Neil deGrasse Tyson is that he's in the same like category of scientists as like Bill Nye. I know he's often compared to him where like I think uh if I remember right the title that Neil deGrasse Tyson is a like science communicator. Is that correct? Um
Is that
like
a degree?
basically I don't think it's a degree. But like he's somebody who is out speaking about science, but isn't necessarily the one doing the science. So he kind of,
He kind of.
sorry, um, yeah, sorry, I'm having a hard time putting my thoughts into words.
Oh, that's fine. Best they're good words than none at all.
Something I can say, um, I did see I didn't see the whole trigonometry interview, but I did see clips of it, and in that he came, from what I saw and what I remember, he seemed very brash and argumentative and didn't like being pressed on his opinions. And I don't remember if that interview was, but yeah, it was probably after he became really um,
Possessed.
Famous, well known,
possessed.
well known.
Yeah, well, he
Hmm.
was already really well known, but
I mean, he
really
was one
into
of the
the
childhood
like
heroes of
science
nerdy kids.
activism.
Hmm. Yeah, he was one of the childhood heroes of nerdy kids, after all. And what Nye and Tyson then perpetuated was not really science, but magical opinion. And because science is about doubt and figuring things out. And in that last interview, there were even some feverish lines, like truly feverish, like his eyes were bulging, where he then just talked about how things ought to be or could be, and he just wanted to get there and argue for getting there, or that things are like that and we just need to realize them, which is rather the position of a sophist and not a scientist or philosopher. And
True.
that's the
Mhm.
big problem. um right. So
There's also that, I guess, the final anecdote to that trigonometry interview, because also there they really listen and they're good at it's also kind of their thing, pushing back against them, whatever it is that you're saying, to try and actually test the arguments. Sophists tend to show themselves at some point during the interview, because what happens is that they get challenged and then they start taking it personally and whatnot, and it goes the way that it goes.
all right, then let's switch to the thing. You all in the watch together?
Yes, I'm in.
If you send me a
Yes.
DM now, I have to click the bubbles away. So if you write something, then best write it in the group we are in.
Noted.
I meant Ferret.
Oh, uh,
I'm sorry.
I just remembered something. I thought about it earlier today with regards to the pursuit of how science is. It's, I guess, part of a broader topic. Um, it is about doubt, but the process that you have is essentially attentiveness and revelation. As in, you're very attentive to what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and with science, you even try to reproduce it so that you can see it again and again to see if it holds true. And the revelation side of it is basically you have something that reveals itself to you and draws you to it, and that's kind of how science is built. Um, Faith is a different function, which is one of the reasons why they look different and are argued differently.
Yeah, but both require doubt in some capacity or they end in fanaticism.
Right.
True.
And with good science, if you have good results and someone comes to you with doubt about it and says, could your position actually be wrong? You could, um, a, a good research and good position will have data to back up the findings that you have. Whereas,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, then these things usually start with a bit of a supercut. Should we skip that and just go right into it, or should we see from the supercut what amazing things are going to wait for us? I mean, we might not be able to cover the whole thing in one go anyway.
I say go for the supercut.
All right.
Because the supercut usually is pretty short, and yes, they cut out bits, but it's for what lies ahead, and if time is short, we can try to skip a bit forward.
All right, then here we go.
Surveys find that roughly 80% of Gen Z believe in astrology, and many allow it to influence major life decisions.
But what would be sad is if that number got to 100%, then the civilization just goes back to the cave, where everything that happened in the natural world was created by forces beyond our knowledge and understanding. So if
He's one to talk with his whole stick to socialism, but I'm jumping ahead because that, if anything in our history has thrown us backwards, it was that ideology. Holy hell. By its mad attempt to jump forward, it always fell backwards.
you want to think you're not in control of your fate because the sun, moon, and planets are, it's a free country. But I'm creating meaning in my life because I can control that.
But is there anything that the universe does to influence us?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And I'll tell you how. Ready?
Neil deGrasse Tyson is one of the most recognizable voices in modern science.
Who turns the mysteries of the universe into simple truths
and simple truths into life lessons.
As a scientist, it's disturbing how easily people divide each other based on skin color, religion, what food you eat, what language they speak, and then they find...
Neil, that's what your ideology is doing now. Oh God, maybe he changed. I will hope so. I have hope. Never stop having
Maybe.
hope. But always,
It kind of reminds... Sorry.
yeah, but always radically accept reality as it is. Otherwise, you'll not have hope. You just have delusions.
Yeah. And reality is...
Not
Though
a
about what
delusion.
you said.
Hopefully, not a delusion.
Yeah. Though about what he said with regards to socialism, it kind of reminds me in a way about how certain types of organized crime that deal with drugs, what they do is that they hook them, they get some of the people who are supposed to distribute the drugs on the drugs. I think I may be getting this a bit wrong, so that so that they continue doing it because they think that this is actually good stuff, and this tends to happen with the whole useful idiot phenomenon with many ideologies, or should I say cults and religions.
I have a bit of a trouble following on that one. I think I know what you're trying to say.
some other philosophy that differs, and then they go to war. But when I step back with a cosmic perspective, you realize how ridiculous it is.
Give me the cosmic perspective.
Well, there's nothing that we can put on the table that can rival the measurements of the universe. And we are literally composed of stardust. So when people think they're different, they have DNA in common with all of the life forms on Earth. Like, you have 20% identical genes to a banana.
Excuse me.
Okay, we all do, not just you. And that's not all. There are molecules that went in and out of your lungs.
Yeah, it's just funny little lines to make either science interesting or funny to draw you in. Well, in the end, yeah, well, we all spring from the same primordial soup. What you're not
I know
saying
we're in the
is that,
supercut.
yeah.
Sorry.
What he's not saying is that 80% of our genes are about how to model our brain. And that is a hellishly big number. But yeah, Ferret?
I know we're still in the supercut, but I'm surprised you already jumped to the well, we're all just stardust, so nothing matters argument.
It depends. You can interpret this in various ways, because the esoteric hippies use the we're born from stars as a magical, wonderful thing. And personally, I find that to be quite nice of a view as well, because it gives you this oneness with the whole thing. It connects you into this great cycle. Of course, you can take from that, we're just dirt, but that I think is the nihilistic way to look at it.
It's boring.
Yeah, like this is the thing I disagree with, or at least the way Carl Benjamin phrased it, that he I think he's on the universe's boring train, but I see the exact opposite, even without magical, mystical forces. I find this whole big machine of causality absolutely beautiful and entrancing. I don't understand how one can find it boring. But then there's people who find castles boring.
That is true. And like the whole thing of causality, it's also intricate on a level that is incomprehensible. As in we can understand a part of it, and that's, part of what helps us survive. It's one of the things that intelligence is for, is to be able to understand and comprehend causality in such a way to lead a better life or ensure better survival, whatever outlook you want to have on that. But causality can also span lifetimes and eons in such a way that you might not be able to see it fully. And yes, there's logic to it, but it's fascinating.
That are in China being breathed by people there. And go further back, Jesus inhaled.
I don't want the China air, but China is indeed breathing Western air, because, and I kid you not, and I'm sorry I don't have a soundboard or something for clips ready. I do not have that set up. Otherwise, I would play the Perrier clip from Spaceballs. That I hope you're familiar with. Ferret definitely is, as anyone who's into space loves science fiction. But New Zealand is truly exporting canned air to China. That is a thing.
That sounds like a scam, but on the other hand, the air pollution in Beijing is so bad that it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not a scam. It's actual New Zealandian air, so that you can have fresh air in China. Take a nose.
Like what I initially thought that the Western air thing is like maybe through some air currents or something, the air from, I don't know, India or Iran or Siberia blows its way into China, and that's how they breathe Western air. But I didn't think that it would be the actual canned air.
Nope, it's actual canned air.
As far as like the atmospheric airflow, I believe it depends on your latitude for effectively which direction the air is flowing. So like closer to the equator, it'll be, those are easterly waves, I believe, and then higher extremes they turn into westerly waves.
It also affects, from what I understand, the reason why you have a lush tropical area, an arid subtropical area, and a lush temperate, or more like a lush tropical zone, an arid subtropical zone, and the lush temperate zone is because of the way the air currents work and the way they push around air and moisture.
While that is all true, all that we need to sell nice air in cans to the Chinese is to look at the pollution maps, which we have, and just take the non-polluted air, put it into a can, and ship it to China. They would even take German air from a city, because it would be probably 5 million times more healthy, even though it stinks like body parts.
Yeah, that's because that's because in Europe they've become much better at controlling emissions, and I'm not talking about carbon dioxide. I'm talking about various sulfuric compounds, nitrous oxides, and all of that sort of stuff.
I love having TISM friends on my streams. While that is true, the air in German cities is absolutely horrible. It is so bad that if you have an apartment in a city in Germany, you can dust it every day, and you will have ash that you sweep together. The stuff I get from behind my PC that the fans blow out. Every few months I just dust it together, and it is black. It is ash. It is not just dust. It is ash.
That's not ash. Ash is white. That would it being black is soot. Soot is basically tiny carbon particles that float around in the air and settle down on stuff.
Yes, we have a name for that, but you really only have it in the cities, and it's it's fumes from cars mainly. What was it? Feinstaubbelastung is the term for it. So fine dust oppression. Yes, we have fine dust oppression.
That is true. Oh, and I just remembered there's another cause of it, and this is another argument against electric vehicles, which is when car tires wear down, where do you think that the bits of tire go? The ones that the bits of tire that get gradually ground away. They go up in the air, and then they fly wherever they do, and they land, and that's another form of air pollution. And the heavier the vehicle, the more intense this grinding action against the tires. And you have a lot of that in cities as well.
Next, you're going to say EVs are on average heavier than regular cars.
And therefore
They are,
use up
because
the
their
tires
batteries
more.
are so insanely heavy.
And so we get even more fine dust oppression.
Yeah, and you also get fine dust from the brakes, from the brakes grinding down as well. Because a heavier car, there's more wear on the tires, there's more wear on the brakes, and the brakes need to be bigger.
The fine dust oppression only increases.
Yeah. Gasoline isn't that bad.
What additional
like
fine dust oppression do we get from EV fires?
Not much comes to mind at the moment that I know of. Not much more. I know about the tires and the brake pads, because these are things that wear away, and you wonder where they go. I think that shoes that from the soles of people's shoes, that's less of a factor because it isn't kicked up as much, but yeah, from what I understand, at least in Europe, they got rid of so many of the terrible emissions that the majority of air pollution is like the dust from tires and from brake pads and from perfumes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and the Turks cologne, because my God, are they overusing perfume? It's unbelievable. You can't even go through the staircase of your apartment building when you pass by the apartment doors. It's like you just came out of the shower and dust sprayed yourself in a whole bottle. It's the same when you walk past them on the street. I have no clue why they're overdoing it so much. But
maybe they learned it from the French, because the French used to be famous for wearing a lot of perfume, even though this is about something that's like, I think, from 200 years ago, but it makes for a good story.
If the last 300 years have taught us anything, it's do not learn anything from the French, except how to make croissants. Croissants are amazing.
And baguettes.
No, they're just long. That's just wheat. That's just a long wheat bun. Wheat buns are they're for Sunday maybe, but not for any other day, because they have no nutrition. It's just sugar. It's horrible.
True.
Good German bread has to have it's gray. It has little seeds in it, and it has a crust that can chip off your teeth. It's beautiful. Bread must be a battle.
oneness with others.
That can't be true.
And that's the next problem. People value what they think is true more than what is true. That's a recipe for...
Yeah, Neil.
He's the one
Isn't
to
that
talk.
funny?
He's the one to talk.
Well, yeah, Drunken Mumble in the chat. Hello. And yes, I noticed that. His eyes look like he's been through a war zone.
the unraveling of civilization as we know it. But as a scientist, show me the data.
And as someone that knows so much
We
about
have so much. The problem is that both so-called wings of politics don't care about data when they want something to be true, as you said. But the topics differ. When the left doesn't like data about demographics at all, unless it's in its favor, or about intelligence. The left loves IQ data when it says our leftists are on average 1 point IQ more intelligent than conservatives. Then they love IQ.
Yeah.
Any other thing about IQ? Nope. Out the window. Ay. And well, what is it with the right wing? What data do they not like? I think violent video games.
It depends which country.
What?
It depends which country.
Yeah, well, I think the universal one is violent video games and violent media. Although the left also pushes that once it is enough in power, because in the end, socialism always wants to de-violence the population, the populace, unless of course it has some war enemy. But other than that, it tries to get rid of all words of violence and depictions of violence and its tools in media, which is why we get these ridiculous censorships. Currently, that's done in Warhammer 40k of all things, where they have now omitted in the ancient, ever same intro text, they have omitted the words men, muscle, and gun from Warhammer 40k.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's antithetical to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But isn't it like the place where you talk about, leveling entire planets or something and killing everything that's on them with sci-fi high-tech super weapons?
It's all about war and men who go to war. But yeah, that's mainly it, and that is why they
The what? They go to war?
The what?
The what?
What?
Not women.
The who?
There you go.
The not women.
You said men. That's no good.
No, I said the not women.
Yeah, and then the thing is that the left isn't satisfied with the actual fighting women in Warhammer, because they kind of destroy the narrative, because it's not about the women, it's about making everybody identical, because that is what the French Revolution even had truly defined. And this is the big mistake of the Enlightenment, that they didn't notice, where they had defined equality before the law not as, okay, we ignore all these different attributes about each individual because you are to be human before the law and nothing else. We ignore everything else, all these elements of status and race and whatever you can come up with. The left actively argued, and this is a treatise by Hilaire Belloc, where he wrote that it is dogma. It is a dogma, which means a point of faith, that the left believes, and he was on the left, so he was making his own point, that this interpretation of equality before the law is nonsensical, as it can only be achieved, that people can only be equal before the law if they are equal in all measures, in all attributes, meaning identical. So people have to be made identical so that they can be equal before the law. This is the result of a very, very, very undeveloped mind, and that is what the left is driven by.
The return to the primordial chaos.
Well, that is the ultimate conclusion of it, which is why I believe that the left is ultimately nihilistic in its goal and its outlook. It resents difference so much. And they say it often enough, that this is why they want to make everybody the same and everything the same, why they erase cultures. So, because they believe that the reason for conflict is difference. So if we remove all difference, there will be no conflict anymore, there will be harmony. And, well, when you point out that, hey, you just want to make everything into the same grey goo, they say, oh no, we're totally not. It's tiring.
I'll also point out that there are people who fight with each other because they're exactly the same.
Yeah. I'm sorry I get distracted by chat. I'm very happy that there are people writing. Hello, Harvard Inspector. Yeah, I didn't want it to... I did not want it to go defunct. It's just that I have too much stress going on to have kept going with anything. So in that way, I'm thankful for Cookie pushing me into this. Happy to see you. So maybe we can even finish this supercut.
Objective truth. I've got a lot of questions. So what do you think is the probability of me getting to another planet in my lifetime? And then could you make the case...
We could do that right away. Ask Elon. You have the money. But I know he means that on a higher level.
That the universe is simulated by some sort of advanced life form. And also, did humans evolve at some point to believe? And do you think you would be happier if you believed in God?
Oh, so you're going to spice this up a bit. Okay, so...
Yeah, those are interesting questions for sure. And the God thing is going to be very interesting because there's a reason for it and there's a necessity for it, at least for a point in development. And it is not necessary to go past. But it can be helpful. And some people should do it. But most people who believe that they do it are actually not ready for it. At least, but that's my point. We'll go into detail maybe later. Who knows?
I see messages all the time.
Oh, before we continue, and I hate to say this, I hate to do this, but you know, they force us to, kind of by necessity. If you could put if you like this nonsense, do tell YouTube about it, because as I've heard, the only thing they care about now is the stupid thumbs up button and nothing else. Whatever. We don't just babble for nothing.
So basically what you're asking is if people like the video to like it if they wish to do so, and if they even wish to subscribe, they should feel more than welcome.
Stop it. Not more than actually necessary at this point. I fucking hate this stuff. I hate it so much. Also, I get 150 subscribers for doing nothing. How does that even work? That's
I think
I'm doing something.
I think they watched previous videos.
No, I just do everything wrong because this is my life works the inverse of how it should. When I do nothing, people come. When I do something, I don't know. It's random. I don't know. Let's just go on. The universe doesn't operate on rationality. At least not this.
In the comment section that some of you didn't realize you didn't subscribe. So if you could do me a favor and double check if you're a subscriber to this channel, that would be tremendously appreciated. It's the free thing that
why would I even say that? I mean, you can just do what he says.
Anybody that watches this show frequently can do to help us here to keep everything going in this show in the trajectory it's on. So please do double check if you subscribed, and thank you so much, because in a strange way you're part of our history and you're on this journey with us, and I appreciate you for that. So yeah, thank you. I've been watching a lot of videos of yours, I think, because I've reached the stage in my life where I've become really existentially curious.
I think we all do at some point, and especially the more you live.
So what? Oh, we have chapters. Nice. And a lot of these things down here. I looked at these. There are some interesting ones. So the power of mortality, yeah, what divides us, origins of faith, living with purpose. Those are interesting topics. Though probably not as controversial as last time.
The more it all sort of, you ask, what does it all mean? How does it all come together? What will it mean to me in 5 years, 10 years? I don't know if you're old enough to think about your mortality, but that's a thing.
That depends on, when that happens, depends not simply just on age. And when people have to find their first gray hair, or when they turn a decade. But I think the 30 decade and the 40 decade, those are the hardest ones. But being confronted with your own mortality, that can happen very early if you go through some really tough shit. And that is why you should do, in my opinion, you should do martial arts. You should do something out in nature. Whether it's hiking, mountain climbing, things like that, where you are with nature and with yourself, where you are inevitably going to listen to the silence, because that is what brings you closer to that. Other than that, the Native Americans had a good metaphor for this. It's one of the better parts of Carlos Castañeda's books, where he interviews an old Native American shaman of some kind by the name of Don Juan, which is like John Smith. It's not really helping. He said it. He phrased it as death is a hunter, and a hunter is patient, and he's always with you. If you extend your arm, he uses the left arm for some reason, and I think that fits if you look into other mythologies.
The left arm is the arm with which you hold the bow.
Mm-hmm.
So at least if you're right-handed, what you do is that you hold the bow in your left hand and you draw the arrow back with your right.
Yeah, but the thing is that Death is a hunter who always sits an arm's length away. So if you extend your arm, your hand, your fingers, it's just a micron further that Death is sitting at all times. And he just waits for the right moment. You don't need to be scared of him. He'll act when he'll do. And that can confront you with your mortality. It can also take away some fear. And it is what a military service also helps with. Because spending some, especially in winter, spending some nights in a cold tent, that helps ground you and teach you what is important in life. That's why I say go out in nature, do some hiking.
When you have fewer years left than the years you've lived, and you can, I think the way they say it is you can have a good expectation to live as long as your parents did. I lost both of them in the last 5 years. So that's my horizon.
Well, unless you get the shot. Right, Neil? Were you shilling for that? We have the data now. You like data, you said. We have a study from Japan with 20 million subjects that clearly states that everybody who took the damn stuff died earlier, and the earlier and the more and the quicker in succession they took the stuff, the quicker they died. And those who didn't take it are fine. Did Neil say anything about that ever? Because I know none of us.
20 million is a very impressive sample size for a study.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Japan.
That's not insignificant.
Not really, no.
And the fact that we die has a capacity to bring focus into the remaining time you're alive. Because think about it, if knowing you're going to die brings focus and purpose and resolve and action, then if you lived forever, what's your hurry? For me, knowing I'm going to die gives meaning.
Did he have an event recently?
It could be, maybe. There's also, I don't know, I'm thinking at the moment when comparing to what was I going to say? The trigonometry one, when I saw part of it, he seems a bit more composed. So it could be that there's something going on. And also, things did change. Like some of the craziness went really crazy, and some masks fell to the ground. So maybe he's reconsidering stuff. I don't know.
Well, we're all still in his familiar waters, and that is kind of that keeps you a bit more chill. But it's always interesting when people get to that point, and for one, of course, you realize this. You realize the substance of the saying of "live every day like it is your last." Because when you notice you're running out of time, and that is the case for every deadline that you have, it does focus you. And on that, the realization of your mortality, maybe that is part of the point, because we're talking about faith as well here, is part of the point of the Garden of Eden story. Because those humans there, they've lived a relatively purposeless life because they were children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they were immortal, it's just that when you are a child and you do not think of your mortality, you do not think of danger because you are unaccustomed to it, it is as if you are, subjectively. You live in that dream of immortality that you're not even aware of because you don't know things different yet.
And you don't have a proper conception of time.
Yeah. It ends with the confrontation. That's when you wake up. It's not that it has been different before objectively, but subjectively, it has, definitely. That's what growing up is. Yeah.
Do you want to put forward the time conception thing that I told you about earlier, or
no, that goes too far. But effectively,
Okay.
that does play into it as well. Because
Okay.
it wakes you up to the future. African time.
True.
African time. I'll do something later on that.
To my remaining life. Whereas if I'm never going to die, then mathematically, that would mean I'd lead a life of no meaning at all.
Oh, that's your problem. And that you stress laugh about that. That this frustrates me. There is so much to do, so much to see, that you cannot even imagine doing something for 1,000 years or 10,000 years or 100,000 years. There are things I could do forever. But you would get bored. I'm autistic, for fuck's sake. I can do things for 100,000 years and not get bored. I can watch paint dry and be amazed, or watch an ice cube melt, or a sun go through all its stages of life in real time. Man, the beauty. The beauty.
Not to mention that he's only one human being.
Mm-hmm.
So even if he lives for 1,000 years and he sticks to, he'll have things to do, because what a single human being can do is less limited than you think on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's still confined. There's still a limit to what you could physically do at any given time.
Yeah, and I mean, with the heat death of the universe, you would also dissipate, so there would be some sort of end. But even that aside, it does require the right mind for this. This is not everybody is cut out for that. And you may say, "Oh, Wisp, that's such hubris. You will hate being immortal." Try me. I thought this nonsense too, because I just adopted the belief. But then I thought about it and thought, not too much. There's just too much cool stuff. And if I run out of that, there's still other stuff that can be done and new stuff. And come on, as long as there are humans They'll figure out new things to entertain themselves, make new games. But you'll eventually master all of them. Not really, no. No.
I think his point is that if you don't have the natural time limit of death, then you won't have the intrinsic motivation to do things with the time that you have. But I think that's a him problem, because
Yeah.
I know I would try to do everything if I had the time.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Neil, the way you talk seems like you were not confronted with your mortality before to a relevant degree, and yet you did things. And yet you did things as if you had meaning. How can the statement be true?
If he loses his way, I guess, is how it can be true.
There's no way to focus an infinity amount of time into anything and have it be meaningful. So I'm taking mortality as a very serious force operating on happiness, productivity. Can you do something for the world?
Mortality is mainly useful to keep the world in flux, to keep evolution going, because otherwise it would just be stuck like the polyps. Which is a way to survive as a species, but it doesn't develop much further.
Yeah.
And
it also reminds... Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and even then, even if we survive, one that could stand immortality, could survive past the heat death of the universe and not dissipate himself, well, you still have a whole mind of yours to entertain yourself with. And, then we start getting into the whole realm of, well, maybe everything is just God's dream. Because that's all that is. A simulation in the mind of a higher being. It doesn't need to be some other dimensions, server room setup, Matrix, MMORPG. Because in the end, that's the same thing. It's just a biological supercomputer or something else.
And on my...
Though I will say that another important thing about death is that death is like when you think of the cycle of life, something is born into this world, it lives in this world. However, most things that you see around on this earth are not fit to be around forever, so they're recycled back into the earth when their time comes. So that's another thing about mortality. Mortality is I guess less about meaning. It's more a time frame within which you do what you came to do, and then at some point you might not necessarily be the right thing around, which is why things cycle around.
The whole meaning problem only arises from a certain level of consciousness. Before that, it's simply not a problem. Because then as an organism, you just do. You just react. And so do certain levels of human consciousness development. It's like an uncanny valley that is self-destructive. And once you come out of that, if you come out of that, man, things are just funny. And they can go on for as long as you want, because then you are free to check out at any time. But that's probably not a YouTube-ready topic.
Yeah.
There is freedom in that. And this is also the harkens back to that metaphor of death is just sitting right next to you at all times. There's no need to be afraid. But the negative interpretation of that, or the negative conclusion of that, we see in cultures like the current Indian one, where they just walk across the street in highest traffic, or just do a 180 on the highway, and China as well, because they believe that they have this twisted idea of karma, where everything is predestined, preordained, so I die when I die anyway, so I just can do this crazy stunt right here, because it will be as it will be. But that's not what that means. What
It's
that
not
rather
karmic, it's nihilistic.
Yeah, more like that. There's a problem with mistaking the interpretation as everything is predetermined. It's God's plan. It's set in stone. Because then you reject personal responsibility for others, for yourself, because you reject causality. Or rather, because, well, you have outsourced causality to magical God, instead of, if I look left and right before I cross the street and wait for a time where it's safe, then I am more likely to survive. That is causality, active causality.
And if I wanted to put it in different terms, I guess you could say that think of causality as a system that, yes, it's influenced by things from outside the system, but also a system is made up of different components, and these components influence each other, which creates causality in and of itself. So saying that everything is preordained, when you look at the way things are, then you're disregarding the interactions between the different components of what's happening, which also influence each other.
Mm-hmm. But hey, thinking is using up energy. And I don't want to do that, so I just walk across the street without looking, because I'll die when I die anyway. That's easier. Be an amoeba.
Tombstone, what I want it to say is a quote from Horace Mann: "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." I want to have made a difference in the world. I want the world to have been better off because I lived in it.
Then leave socialism behind, please. That would be forward. Don't listen to the people who say that they are for progress and that it goes forward, because they could be lying, Neil.
Well, maybe he will. Let's hear him out.
Yeah, it would be
and
wonderful.
He also has the articulation ability he also has the ability to articulate past that.
Yeah.
Which is part of the sad thing about this whole story.
Mm-hmm. I have met so many people with sickeningly high IQs. Like in the 140s, 150s, even the 160. And very logical people, but they have fallen for the scam. Because the scam got to them before anything else, and having a very high IQ does not shield you from emotional manipulation. A narcissistic liar who's about 100 or even below can easily outwit a very high IQ individual, because you think that the other one, you fall to the illusion that the other one is acting rationally. But whoever is trying to manipulate you with brazen lies, with gaslighting, knows that he or she is lying, and therefore, from your perspective, it is actually somebody acting irrationally. So the act of lying to you is a rational process, but from your position, you cannot win with rational arguments. You cannot win with appeals to objective reality, because the liar, who knows what the reality really is, will just keep on lying, because another outcome is pursued. The one where you are manipulated, if only to be driven insane because you're in the way. You cannot reason with the irrational. That is the important part. And people who fall into this scam, it's very hard to get out of it, because, well, when you are of average intelligence, okay, you've fallen for the average lies of the ideology. But when you have fallen for the cult with, let's say, 160, with a 160 IQ, then your reasoning for the ideology will be of the complexity to fill the gaps with a complexity only your IQ is capable of, because it all must make sense, right? So you will do the work for the cultist to make the ideology work in the moment, and you will not notice how you are deceiving yourself, because unraveling those complex lies to yourself, ooh, that really only you or somebody more intelligent than you can do, or a brick to the face by reality, which isn't a physical brick, but some life event that really shows you what you were believing in doesn't work. And I have had the counter arguments of, and I kid you not, that that's difficult to rephrase. So it was someone very intelligent, and you could have wonderful conversations about art and comics with that person. It was a real artist, not one of the weirdos. But he wanted that objective expert in government who would do all the things, who would do the planned economy and everything. And I asked, but that would still be a human. He will be flawed. He will make mistakes. And his reply in the end was, under the line, and he admitted to that with a very staunch yes, was that, well, he doesn't want to know who that is, but it will be an expert. So he wants the amorphous, godlike expert, but he doesn't want to be reminded that it is a flawed human. And that's when it will work. And that,
Trust the experts.
yeah, and you want to tell, and these people want to tell me that this is not faith-based. This is entirely a construct of faith.
Is that too much to ask of any of us? Really? We're all capable of good deeds. So, if the world is better off...
Oh yeah, some people are capable of good deeds for transactional means in order to get something out of other people. That's not really a good deed, really. It's a superficially good deed, but its purpose, it would be a truly good deed if its purpose was also good and not selfish.
You also have people who do good deeds, not because they intend to do something good, but because it just happens, and there's no real intention behind it either.
Yeah,
which is also not particularly good.
Yeah, let's say it's the neutral intention or the non-intention.
As a citizen of planet Earth.
And this all sort of dovetails into this new book that you've written. I call it a new book, but it's really a revision of a very successful book that I think the first copy was published in 1998, called Just Visiting the Planet, Further Scientific Adventures of Merlin from Omniscia,
yeah.
When I think about these bigger questions about the universe, meaning, purpose, death, why am I here, religion, all these things, so often I think about them through the context and information that I find in your work, because when I think of like the world being so big, as you talk about in this book, and so infinite, and all these stars, I feel meaningless. In a nice way sometimes. I feel like the shit that I worry about no longer matters. But then when you talk about...
You feel meaningless in a happy way.
Yeah. I feel like the things that cause me suffering don't matter as much as I thought they did. And then you talked about shortening time by realizing that you're going to live for 90 years or 80 years, creating great amounts of meaning. And it feels somewhat like I don't know.
Yes, the universe is huge in size, in age, in contents. There's nothing we can put on the table that can rival those measurements that we make of the universe. However...
How big?
Well, there's the light from the most distant galaxies has been traveling for nearly 14 billion years. 10 billion years more than Earth has even existed, if you want to get a sense of that. And so, but think about it a whole other way, that if you look at the ingredients of life, not just human life, but life on Earth, and you can rank the elements. What's the number one element in life? We mentioned the human body. The number one element is hydrogen. That's contained in the H2O of the water content of your body, which, depending on how chubby you are, it can anywhere from a half to 3/4 of your body weight is water. And all right, what's the next most abundant element in your body? It's oxygen, attached to the water. Okay, H2O, and both the H and the O appear in many, many other molecules in our body, in the DNA and in your muscle tissue, all of this, and in the blood. Okay, what's third? Carbon, which you would have thought had to be somewhere in the list because you know where.
I know that this is a very nitpicky tangent, but the hydrogen isn't only present in the water; it's also present in fat. So the fat molecules in your body, what they are is that they're basically chains of carbon atoms with hydrogens attached to them. Those are the fatty acids, and you have I think like three of them attached to a glycerol or something like that.
He did mention
But
that.
yeah, but he mentioned the hydrogen as a part of the water.
Yeah. But I don't
It's a
think we
tangent.
need to. Yeah, but I don't think we need to diss him about this here in regards to the main topic. Well, I do like the info.
Carbon-based life. Fourth is
Well, it's a pleasure.
nitrogen. Okay. Fifth, I'll put them all together and just say other. Okay. So that's the sequence of elements.
That's
and now you say,
how
what are the sequence
dismissive
of
of
elements
the
in the
minorities?
universe? The number one is hydrogen. The number two is helium, but that's chemically inert. You might remember from high school chemistry. You can't do anything with it anyway. Helium. Next in the universe.
We can build the Hindenburg.
We can what?
We can build Zeppelins. We can do
Yeah,
a lot
right.
of helium.
He was referring to like its reactivity and
Yeah.
We could
You
evolve balloony organs and turn into Zeppelins.
Yeah, but you need to get the helium from someplace, because if you make the helium, you're going to wind up causing nuclear fusion, which will cause not only
Well,
you
right.
but everything.
Well, that's why there is so much helium, is because we have so much hydrogen, and the hydrogen ends up fusing into helium.
But the helium is
Yeah.
flying away, so we need to use it up before it's all gone anyway.
Oh God, don't remind me.
Let's have more kids' balloons, because that's so
No.
it's such a useful use of helium.
I cringe every time I see one.
Yes. So, chat, if you didn't know, the helium on Earth is slowly flying away through the atmosphere. We don't want to just push it out quicker. It's a dumb idea. While children's smiles are wonderful, but helium is really, really, really limited.
We do have natural reserves of it in the world, but they're not that bountiful. And when the helium is just lighter than our planet's atmosphere, so it literally just floats into space, just goes away.
What if we build nuclear fusion plants? We need to figure out the full extent of the technology to properly do it. But what if we do that,
We're
and
trying
then we get to make helium?
We're trying to. We're trying to build the Philosopher's Stone, which is the fusion reactor. It's not sacrificing millions of people, dear socialists. It's the fusion reactor. It turns one element into another. That's its purpose. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Scientifically, we know how it operates. The issue is getting the temperature and density, like the models that we have for nuclear fusion are in the environments of the center of a star, which we can't exactly, that's the problem we have, is we can't create that on Earth.
Just make the Earth denser.
Oh shit.
Then you make
It's so simple.
then you make yeah, but then what happens is that gravity increases
Okay.
and
That's the joke. We can't live on Earth if we make it denser.
true.
Oxygen. Next, carbon. Next, nitrogen. Next, other. Okay, so we are 1 for 1.
Again with the discrimination.
Matched to the ingredients of the universe.
So if he lists hydrogen, helium, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen. If I remember correctly, the ratios are about 80% in the universe, about 80% hydrogen, roughly 20% helium, and like less than 1% everything else.
So oxygen, carbon, nitrogen is already other.
Yes.
That's insane.
So he's
Aren't the
discriminating
other-
against the lesser nothing.
Like gold.
So it's a well that anyway. But is this is this microaggressing if it's about minuscule amounts?
Well, he may be listing oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen because those three. So like the primary method of nuclear fusion in most stars, the smaller mass stars, is just the proton-proton chain, which simply put is taking two hydrogen and fusing them together into helium. But in more massive stars, there is another common fusion method called the CNO cycle, which takes carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, CNO, and through a series of reactions, those end up producing helium. So that could be why he lists those, just because it's like the other common nuclear fusion engine.
The basis for everything.
Aren't the other elements created by basically when the pressure is so intense that even the helium gets forced to fuse with other elements like hydrogen and helium and whatnot, and it creates bigger atoms?
Basically, yes. There ends up being a runaway fusion that happens inside once the hydrogen is running out. Like you mentioned, the helium is mostly inert, but you get so you get fluctuations in the pressure and density inside the star once you're running out of hydrogen, and so you can think like when the engine is on and it's producing helium, the outward pressure creates the size of the core. When that runs out and the engine turns off, it doesn't actually turn off, but you can think of it turning off. The core shrinks because it's massive. It has gravity. It's going to collapse in on itself. That collapse in
it increases the pressure and it causes things
it increases the pressure and it turns it on again, and so you eventually get fusion creating higher order elements along the periodic table, which is where you get at least in most cases, which is where you're getting carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and so on.
It would also explain why carbon is so ridiculously common, because within this sort of pressure fluctuation, well, helium has an atomic weight of, I actually don't know the atomic weight. Helium has 2 protons, and carbon has 4.
Carbon has 6.
You are running
Carbon
way
has
too deep
6?
into the super science rabbit hole.
Yeah, sorry. I stand corrected about the carbon.
I think you would make a good
And
guest on one of these podcasts, though, more so than Neil. And you're not even. Oh, wait, no. Well, Ferret is a space scientist.
Yeah, I just know a lot of random things.
Yeah.
I'm not as thoroughly educated in a single discipline as Ferret is.
Well, that's the
I'm
blessing of
just
the
glad my
artist.
education is getting some use.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
We will talk about such things at some point.
Yep.
The gifts of 20th century astrophysics is gifts to civilization is where those ingredients came from. We trace those ingredients, the hydrogen, to the Big Bang itself, and all these heavier elements to stars that manufactured those elements in their core, in the crucible that is their core. They lived out their lives. They exploded, scattered that enrichment into gas clouds so that the next generation of stars would have planets, and on at least one of them have life, as we know it, life on Earth. So that
I mean, like caring for the next generation, for your children, so that they can have a better world than the one you had. Isn't that a wonderful, wonderful allegory?
Yes.
That is nice.
you can think of us not just figuratively, but literally composed of stardust. And so that it's not that we are alive in the universe. Yes, that's true. But the universe is alive within us. So we're
So you're speaking like a mystic, Neil. Which is
Oh,
nice.
that's deep, bro.
Yes.
Yeah. But that is kind of how you can find that reverence again.
Yeah.
special
Yep.
because we're the same as the universe. Often when people think they're special, I want to be different from it. No, we're same because we have human DNA on an Earth where we have DNA in common with all other animals, all other life forms on Earth. Do you realize we and mushrooms have more in common with each other than either
Don't
we
remind
or
me.
mushrooms have with green plants? The common ancestor between fungus and animals split later in the tree of life. Then its common ancestor split with green plants. You have 20% identical genes to a banana.
Excuse me.
Okay, we all do, not just you, not just you.
was gonna
Okay, you have it. So when you consider all of this, it's not just that we're alive in the universe. The universe is alive within us, and that discovery.
Some mystics say that we exist so that the universe can reflect upon itself,
Mm-hmm.
which I find the even better way to put it, because that itself gives purpose.
Yeah. And there's also a few certain ways, as in if you look at monotheism a certain way, you can also think of it as in the sense of one of the ways of seeing God is that you have the presence that is both outside of everything and within everything. It
Yeah,
sounds a bit contradictory.
no, it just doesn't connect right to what he said here.
Yeah, but the idea is that it is also a part of you.
Mm-hmm.
That we're all part of this greater thing that is, on the one hand, this big thing in which everything is, but on the other hand, it's divided up within everything that is.
Yeah, and when you're stuck in your big ego phase, then you misinterpret this as I don't just have a godly spark, I am a god. Woo! And then it just goes into bad tyranny stuff.
Yeah.
Borders on the spiritual.
Yeah.
And it's a scientific result. So when I look up at night, I never feel small. I feel large. I feel as large as the universe itself, because that's where we came from. We're a participant in a great
Not
unfolding
came from. We're
story.
still.
Sorry.
Not came
Sorry.
from. It's where we still are. Where we still are. We are still in the universe. The Earth is still part of the whole thing. So there's
Yeah.
one more step, Neil. One more step.
I
cosmic
was
evolution.
going to pause, and that was part of the pause tagging. I was going to say, like, when he said that, and I was going to say, and you were saying, Neil,
The minute you said that, I thought of all
where
these Eastern traditions and religions that say we are one. And from a scientific perspective, as you say, we very much are one.
Yeah, it's what's interesting is one of my deep concerns about the world is many philosophies or religions that say we are one, they find some other philosophy that differs and then they go to war.
Yeah.
I don't mean to laugh at that, but we're not good at feeling oneness with everyone. It's easy to feel oneness with our tribe. Our tribe could be skin color, religion, who you.
Yeah, and there's relevance in that because your tribe is your most extended family.
Mhm.
There's evolutionary purpose to that, and you may not want to hear that, but that is a reason for conflict. And yes, all these mythologies, they come from a similar idea, maybe a similar root, maybe the same root, except for some which are in active conflict with everything else, which shall not be named right now, that the likes of Neil are being shilling for some reason, because it goes hand in hand with socialism.
Yeah.
Yeah, his overall point is that we're all the same because we're made up of all the same elemental building blocks, which is true, but he's ignoring the parts past that. Like he mentioned the connections between us and fungus, where we 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 split in development, but even as people, we've done that too. Like that's part of what differentiates different cultures. Is even though we're all humans, we all have developed, maybe not biologically, but societal, culturally, in different ways, and that's where the division is. Even though
Yes,
we're all still human.
What makes
It's like, sorry.
what differentiates us from the other animals is that we have a cultural layer on top of the plain material, and that makes the classification a bit different, because a tribe in the human sense, you can be integrated into the tribe, accepted into the tribe, and with pack animals that happens on a lower level as well. Like a pack of wolves, they can
Yeah.
take in a stray from another pack, but that's
Usually they don't.
yeah, but it's just as much a special occasion, because the
But-
one who
Yeah.
joins, who is accepted into the pack or into the tribe, will submit to the tribe, become wholly part of the new tribe, and adopt its practices.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the
Also-
and that's the thing that with the human tribes has to happen as well. If that doesn't happen, you just get conflicting tribes next to each other, and that's
Yeah.
you have with us you have the biological layer and the cultural layer on top. Those are two types of tribes, and you have the most peace when those are in congruence.
Yeah. And also, like, the way he's talking, it feels to me like he's talking about all houses are made of bricks, but there are square houses, there are round houses, there are triangular houses. They're all very different houses, and that's why there's this conflict between there's this conflict and there's this distinction between the houses, because yes, they're made of bricks, they're all made of the same material, we're all made of the same material, but but in how it's put together, there's difference.
Look, hexagonal houses are clearly superior to all others.
Not octagonal ones.
Octagonal houses would be superior if you could line them together easily. A hexagonal house may have its issues, but you can perfectly use up the space. It's always open.
Okay, I see your point.
Yeah, see? Actual proof that I'm right, as always.
Sleep with, who you don't sleep with, what food you eat, what rituals you perform. And so those people choose sides based on so many factors that it's actually, to me, just as a scientist, it's disturbing how easily and quickly we will divide each other and make that the reason for how you interact, rather than see what we have in common and make that the reason for why we would come together.
This has been really front of mind for me for the last 24 hours. There's been a lot of things that have happened in the news that have thrown the conversation around division to the very front of my mind. And that, in the UK, we've got all these people that are marching next week, I believe, through London because of, various political things. And I was saying to my friends last night, I said, I think actually that the root cause isn't this or that, it's the division itself. And
yeah, you can overanalyze. I mean, if you look deeper than whatever...
The conflict there is relatively simple. That is that the cultural tribe of socialism, because it sees itself as its own tribe with its own subdivisions, is in conflict with the non-socialists, which is everybody else on the planet, which is mainly the native populations of each country, and seeks to replace them with socialists, because to socialists, everybody must be a socialist. Everybody must be within, nobody without, nobody against. Mussolini's base definition of fascism that he coined for the modern fascism holds true for all socialism and the few other faiths that are quite fanatical. And so the goal can only be, if we can't convert them to our tribe, socialism, then we must get rid of them so that only our tribe exists. That is the cultural tribe of socialism. Whether there are also racial tribes of socialism, that's a secondary question. Because if socialism first cares about, are you part of it on the psychological level?
Yeah.
And
I'll also note, I just wanted to put in Mussolini's definition, as you told me once in the past, which is nothing against the state, nothing outside the state, nothing but the state.
I thought it was against. Well, I think that's the German one is a bit different in the translation. All right.
What people are saying is the reason they are marching or arguing. If you just part the curtains and unpack it all, at the bottom of that is there's a tribe here and a tribe here, and they think this way and they think that way, and never the twain meet unless we rethink how we interact with one another.
Yeah, the problem are the tribes who actually are closed to compromise, that do not accept those who don't think like themselves. And the problem is the left is exactly that. They pretend to be open while they are in the minority, because then they still have to gather strength, they still need to convince others. But once they gain enough strength that they can dominate, they will purely dominate and act through force. They will force you to submit to their tribe or perish. And the thing is that a compromise with them then always means you give them, like, for example, 50%, and then they have those 50%. And then they will keep push for more. Then you give them another compromise, another 50%, and they get more again until there's nothing left of you. This is why you cannot compromise with them, because every compromise with them is only a win for them. It is actual strategy.
He's also missing a very important question. So first of all, he identified that there are two different tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Second, he identified that they think differently.
Mm-hmm.
Third is that never the twain meet. The next question that he needs to ask, and he seems to skip over this question, which is why. Before saying, okay, we need to change this, ask why. Why don't they meet?
Well, if they never meet at all physically, then there's no problem.
Yeah, but like, why don't they meet? Why can't they meet? Not, oh, we need to change the way we communicate. Why do those two ideas never meet? And also with regards
with
to
meat, what he means with meat is that they don't reason things out with one another for peace.
so the big question is why don't they reason with one another? Another question which I only remembered now.
Because one thing's raping children is reprehensible and inhuman, and the other things it's what we should do, and there is simply no room for compromise there.
Yeah,
and that's that.
Another thing that I forgot, but it's still within this narrow point, which is okay, this tribe thinks this and this tribe thinks this. What does this tribe think? And what does this tribe think? So trying to figure out the details of what does each tribe think, why do they think that, and therefore move on to the next step, which is why don't they meet and why won't they meet? And that will lead you to, okay, so how should we settle this? Because don't think of them always as being equal to one another with regard, but just being different.
The Zulu had a very simple solution to that.
The Zulu just killed everyone.
Yeah. And then there was only one tribe. No more conflict.
Yeah.
Which is how you can bring peace to the entire world. You just wipe out everybody who thinks different from you. Oh wait, socialism is trying that.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You know, with the race friction that existed around the world, but especially in colonial Europe and
bullshit. Have you ever looked at the racism in the religion that shall not be named? The Arabs are the master race in it. The rest are second class. Or third class.
Third class or fourth class even. Like if you're Pakistani and you're going to and you go to an Arab country, you'd be surprised what you might see. And Indonesian, not even. And also with regards to like what the Qataris and the Emiratis do, where they have people from Nepal and they basically treat them like slaves and they die in droves and it barely sees any media attention.
Yeah, and inter-African racism between different black Africans is that never ended. That is going on to this day, and it's that there are religious genocides going on, yes, but it's also simply purely tribal. And then we have the Chinese communists who have declared the Han Chinese to be the master race. That was Mao, and man, that's not fun either. So don't give me this the colonials bullshit. Everybody did this, and some people never stopped. We were stopping, Neil.
You stopped.
Yeah, and then the left came and noticed, oh shit, if people aren't racist anymore, we have no topic anymore to complain about. Let's restart a racism engine and redefine the words. And now the leftist activists are going, oh, actually, it's not racist if I'm racist against that specific race. So it's okay. Like, how can you fall for that? Everybody could see what you were doing. Everybody.
I think a similar thing happened here in the United States with the LGBT, where the big push was to get gay marriage legalized, and it got legalized, and they got what they wanted, and then they went, oh shit, we got to find something else to fight about. And I think that's when the trans movement really kicked off.
Well, the normal gays, they went home because they got what they wanted. Like
exactly.
the normal women went home after feminism got them the vote and all of the equal force nonsense.
So just each generation, the normal people are going home, and it's just distilling even crazier and crazier people.
Well,
Yeah.
distilling in a way. The crazy people have always led these movements from the very beginning. We noticed about the rainbow movement that it was the P's who were organizing everything, and the normal gay people, they were just marching with it because they didn't know they were actually led by the P's. And just like the T is being led by the P's and mainly filled with P's. There is barely any T in the P.
Yeah. This reminds me. This was ages ago, but I had the chance to talk on several occasions with someone over Discord, and one of the interesting things about her is that her grandmother was one of the people was a feminist, and the reason why I'm saying was a feminist was because she fought to implement all sorts of changes that gave equal rights and all of that, and she was a leader in this, and then she went home, and what this girl told me about her grandmother is that whenever I'm going to rephrase it in my words because I don't remember her exact words, but when she would see one of these modern third wave feminists, she's like, "We already have everything. We already have what we wanted. All you're doing, what is it that you're fighting that you're fighting for? All you're doing is man hating."
Yeah, and you find the answer in so many places. It was all admitted. One of the older examples is through Erin Prizzy, who invented the women shelters, and she talks of there are interviews with her. Lovely lady, and she told that in the beginning, when the women shelters were founded, they were for the whole family. Because, of course, when there was trouble at home, it's a family issue. And very shortly after, the women shelters were taken over by socialists who were very openly using them as recruitment grounds and for radicalizing into feminism, man-hating feminism and socialism, because for them it's about breaking up the family. And of course, when there's trouble at home, that's a wonderful angle to start doing that. And of course, get rid of the men, demonize the men, because that's how you weaken society. That's how you make women, who are generally more dependent. This is just a biological truth. When you're pregnant, you are dependent. You can't do many things. So that's a natural part of a woman's life. And then to move that dependence from men to the state, which is what socialism wants, everybody dependent on the state. And then they would introduce rules like, we don't take boys above the age of 8. So it's still a child. But the women would be scared of the man, like the 9-year-old? Bloody hell. And so Erin talks about this pretty openly. If I don't know if she's still around, I would hope so. Check out interviews with her. She did some with Allison from what's her name? Something with K. Strawn from the Honey Badgers. And those old interviews were really good. Other parts are our longtime favorite, Anita Sarkeesian. She even admitted in interviews that it was during the height of her feminist frequency nonsense, which also turned out to be a total scam. That the left, of course, doesn't care about that it was a scam, because it was never about making those videos. It was only about pushing propaganda and denigrating in industry and the hobby, so that they could have an excuse to get into it and start controlling it. And she admitted in an interview back in the day that it isn't about feminism, it's about socialism. Because feminism is about socialism. It's just another
Yeah.
vehicle. And the whole rainbow is just a vehicle for socialism. Everything else that you see is just a vehicle for socialism. The workers' movement was just a vehicle for socialism. They have dropped the working class a long, long, long time ago. But every election, they will, of course, bring out the old propaganda, which makes absolutely no sense with the laws that are already in place. Like,
When the working class are
okay.
people like Tommy Robinson, or
yeah,
people like Tommy Robinson's friends, more like, actually.
yeah, and we saw.
But that's his upbringing, and you see all of the people who follow him, who are, from what I understand, for the most part working class, because essentially, to my understanding and the way I've explained it to people who don't know much about Tommy Robinson here, about Tommy Robinson, is that his opinions are basically very, very, very in line with those of Douglas Murray, except that he comes from the working class with all the different things that it implies. The upbringing, the social stratas and whatnot, and everything with that. But at the end of the day, their opinions are not too far off, and also they both seem to have similar traits, like being very courageous. And
Well,
I think it,
yeah.
and I think it was Konstantin Kisin who said that the two of them share a lot in common with regards to what they think.
Well, and this is the interesting thing about the demonstration that he's talking about here, which was the people of the nation, the actual native people of the nation, and those immigrants who have integrated into the tribe of the native nation, of the native people. That's the important part. And that the native people of the nation also accept into their tribe. And
Yeah.
And the left side completely misconstrues this as, oh, it's all just the white supremacists who just hate everybody. They actively ignore all of that, like and their little counter protests, then whine, and suddenly realize, oh, why are all these people there in these weird clothes, like work clothes? It's because they're the actual workers, you little twats who've never worked a day in your lives. All you do is professionally demonstrating, which is effectively not doing anything. I've been at demonstrations when I was younger. It's the most boring thing you could do with your time. Seriously. But I mean, the pointless little leftist demonstrations of, we're setting a sign, it's a symbol, and that nobody sees or cares about, because to them it's like a magic ritual. And there's a similar thing to be said about the AfD, because this horrible Nazi party that are fascists and racists and white supremacists is full of homosexuals and foreigners. With very, very foreign names that have seats in state parliaments and even the federal parliament, and the left either ignores that they are there, they completely omit that, and unless one is very directly in the spotlight, and then they say, oh, they're just using him or her. He'll wake up to being a useful idiot. Well, it's the left who makes useful idiots. It's a projection again.
It's the pot calling the kettle black. Because what you mentioned about the shelters, that is predatory behavior, because these women are vulnerable, and vulnerable people tend to be much easier to manipulate.
Mm-hmm.
So, excellent recruiting grounds for an ideology.
Which is also why they go for the mentally ill, and why they are happy to make the youth mentally ill, make them depressed, make them suicidal.
And why they want to capture the women and go against the men, because at least from what I understand, in a healthy society, the men square up against the threats coming from outside, and the women help perpetuate. They're very involved with traditions and how things are done within the community.
You have
Like with
concentric
regards
circle
to
of every the smallest unit is the family. It's
Yeah.
not it can't be smaller. If it's smaller, then it's you have a very tragic life. The natural healthy smallest unit is the family, and that is child, mother, father in concentric circles. And if that is disturbed, then we run into problems. We run into stress and we run into extinction. That is that is a simple truth. It doesn't matter how much you dislike it. It's how our species functions. And as an individual, maybe you don't like doing that. Okay, in the West, you have the freedom to actually do something else.
Yeah.
As long as you don't force anybody else to also function as you do. If you're happy not having children, all power to you. But don't force it on everybody else. The left, however, wants to force it on everybody else because that is a form of control, of population control. So everybody gets atomized. Everybody gets made dependent on the state. And by forcing everybody to need to work, by lowering the wages, now everybody has to work. So the women have to work so that there's enough money in the household for your children.
And they have to have their children raised by the state.
Yes, because you don't have the time anymore, because you're working. So you also need to pay more from the little money that you make for childcare for somebody else doing that work. That's a waste.
When it's your child.
Yeah, that's a complete waste of money. And while it is useful that your children play with other children their age, those things need to be organized in a different way. And not the way that the left envisions. What people don't know is that the kindergarten, German word by the way, was invented in Vienna by the Nazis, so that the women were free to work in the factories to make ammunition.
That's something that I didn't know.
Yeah, the Nazis
were
proto-feminist. Isn't that wonderful? If you want to fob leftists, just tell them what the Nazis invented that they are for. Because somehow they, I call it the Nazi cooties. Because anytime something was vaguely touched by the Nazis, you can't do this anymore. And then because you then get the cooties. But there are some things that they won't admit has the Nazi cooties.
Yeah.
And they squirm every time. You of course need to show the receipts. Anyway.
Yeah.
The slave trade and all of this. And okay, that's not good. It's bad. And all right, but then you look at World War I and World War II.
Oh God, slave trade. My God. Here's one thing that nobody talks about. It's very funny. We had slavery in Germany, in the Holy Roman Empire of Germanic nation. It wasn't called slavery. We had, like all of human history, we had our own word for it. Because as we know, slavery is a thing that the word was coined by the Moors in Iberia when they held Spain. But slavery existed before that. It just had different names in different cultures, in different languages. The way it was called in Germany, was Leibeigenschaft or Frondienst. Fron is a bit difficult to explain, but Leibeigenschaft, I can translate that very directly as body ownership. And the thing with body ownership, where you will never find on any Wikipedia article that was actually slavery. They will describe how it was conducted, however, which is when you were a Leibeigener, you would work on an estate, like a farm, and you would not be allowed to leave it. And if you wanted to get married, you needed the okay of your master. And all of these little things. Does that sound like slavery?
That sounds like the serfdom that existed in most of Europe up until the Black Death, which caused a manpower shortage, which forced things to change because they didn't have enough people that they could keep doing this.
Well, and if we go back all the way to like Hammurabi, when we translate Hammurabi's law, we translate the words that were used there as slaves and slavery. But the conduct
Slave
for
in
it,
the Semitic language is usually, I guess, for lack of a better term, doer,
Mhm.
as in he does something for you.
which is a kind of a worker.
Yeah,
But in the
you
end,
use him to do things.
yeah, well, in translations, they still use the word slave for some reason. And but the descriptions of the limitations of what rights they had and what rights you actually needed to care for them, just like you needed to care, you had a duty to care for the well-being of your Leibeigene, just as you had a duty to care for your slaves in the United States. Such rules were not there in other cultures in the world. But in the end, if we call that slavery what was in the United States, then we have to call Leibeigenschaft slavery as well.
Yeah.
But that's not a narrative we can keep around. Because then, oh, the Germans were slaves to other Germans? That's not right. We can't sell that. We can't sell German guilt with that.
Being a slave doesn't mean that you don't have rights. Being a slave means that somebody else owns you.
Yep.
And these are two very different things. For example, in ancient Judea, slavery was a thing around the entire world. But one of the laws is if you hurt your slave in a way that they wind up losing an appendage, and that even includes a tooth, you have to set them free. But even and that is very clearly a right, and it compels you to set them free if whatever. But unless that happens, they're still a slave, which strengthens the idea of being a slave doesn't mean that you don't have rights. It means that someone owns you. And I guess it's not surprising that many cultures had certain rights for slaves, but rights for slaves tend to be pretty limited.
Well, it doesn't look good when you just waste your workforce.
Yeah. And the other point that I want,
a happy worker is a good worker is holds true throughout history.
Yeah.
There's
and another thing that I forgot is, even if the slaves have rights, keep in mind that there's also standards of care for animals. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because these are creatures that are very often owned, and you have careful owners, you have benign owners, but you also have neglectful owners and even abusive owners. And you have it with anything from inanimate objects to animals. And if you have a world, if you're in a world where you have people who are owned as property, well, some of them are going to be neglected or abused, because that's just a fact of life of humanity. People own things. Some of them will treat their things well. Some of them will treat them terribly. And also, the Atlantic slave trade was smaller than the Arab slave trade, and it ended sooner. And also, they didn't castrate them.
Yeah, which is why we still have black people, and the Muslim nations don't. And so nobody in the Muslim nations is asking for reparations. When really, it would make the most sense to demand reparations from the Muslim nations for their genocides.
Oh, like how the Emiratis are funding a genocide in Sudan?
That is, well, that is present day stuff. I was
That
talking
is
about.
present day stuff.
Yeah, we don't talk about that when they do bad things. That's not politically correct.
I know it's not politically correct, but I wouldn't be too sorry if the if never mind. These are opinions that I'll save for another time,
Yes,
another place.
exactly.
Um,
Everything is wonderful.
yes.
White people fighting white people, slaughtering them in great numbers. So you can divide by skin color, but apparently people find plenty of reasons to divide and conquer, to divide and kill, to divide and oppress. And skin color is one in a long list of all the reasons people have given to religious wars, to worshiping the different god, or worshiping the god differently. These are human beings. And I wrote a whole book. I think one of those books in your stash there, that one, Cosmic Perspectives on Civilization, one in your left hand there. That one is what conflict in the world looks like when you are
Didn't know he
scientifically
had written so many.
and you have a dose of cosmic perspective on top of it.
Give me the cosmic perspective, please.
I'm just gonna pause it for a moment. From what I feel, something that a state that he's in. So think about where you think of the world in a lower state with the them and the us, and then there's the point where you realize that everything is all connected and everything's one whatever, which is where he is, which brings about a crisis. But if you stay there, well, leaving aside, it's not good. I mean, leave that thing for a second.
So you mean he
The
has
next stage,
he has a jump in consciousness level?
yeah, and he's like he took a step, he took a step, but he needs to take the next step, and he's sort of stuck in the middle.
Well, it to take that step requires that you abandon a lot of the utter crap that you had fallen for before, because you realize, oh my god, have I fallen for crap? That's a lot of dead wood, and it's painful. When you have fallen for a scam and dedicated a large portion of your life for, it's very difficult to let go of that. And this is part of the psychology that they exploit, because nobody wants his life to be a sunken cost fallacy, or to realize that, to accept that your life is a sunken cost fallacy. So you keep on adding more, because the sunken cost fallacy ends in the moment that you realize and accept it as a sunken cost fallacy. Only then can you stop feeding it. And well, I wonder what the actual event was, that if this is a changed Neil deGrasse Tyson, I wonder which of the events of the past did that. Whether it was the Kirk thing or something else.
I think it may have been the Kirk thing, but it seems like something did happen to him since the last time. He's not as, even though this is still the beginning of the interview, he seems a bit
tired, exhausted, maybe humble.
Yeah.
But the last is a guess. But that because it can just be a product of being exhausted.
And also what he's describing now, this cosmic thing, it's a cosmic crisis that he hasn't gotten out of yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's preaching about it, but he's still about the crisis, but he hasn't made his way out yet. I don't know if he'll make his way out, but there's the point of, there's them, there's the us, we are good, they are bad, and then from there are probably some steps along the way you get to this sort of cosmic crisis that he has, but which you can very easily get lost in if there's no objective thing for you to orient yourself to in accordance to.
that is exactly the thing from to the level where he's getting to, because the realization of, oh, you're left with nothing
Yeah.
for now. You have to rebuild your world model,
Yeah.
and likely from the ground up. That is very tough, especially at that age. And
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have a direction for it, because especially if you are scientifically minded, and I want to believe that he truly is, allows you to build it in a logical fashion, and it just becomes what it will be. It will be what it will be,
Yeah.
not without any prior directed goal.
And there are three things that he needs to do. Two of them very repetitive, and he'll need to do them multiple times, which is to observe and to reflect. To observe what's going on. Now that he's noticed all of these things, yes, it's an existential crisis, but now he sees something that he didn't see before. So now he should look at it very, very closely and think about what he sees, not just in the here and now, but also in where where does it come from and where does it go? All of it, this, that, the combination of everything, and that's a never ending process that he's going to need to keep on doing, but everyone should do it. Um, and the third one is decide which direction does he want to go. Okay, now that he's noticed the stuff and that he's thought about it, where does he want to go? Which direction does he want to face? What does he want to achieve?
That's not that. I don't think that's where he is yet. This is just he rebuilding the model.
Yeah, he's still at the
It
observing
is
and reflecting
yeah,
stage.
yeah, because that is a confusing and exhausting process. It takes up a lot of energy, which is why the human brain usually shies away from it, because you don't touch a running system, because
Yeah,
it works, because it is the brain is evolved to conserve energy so that we survive, get through hardship, and thus we can't waste too much on weird hypothetical thought models and mapping the world. We just map the world to the degree that suffices, because
yeah,
thinking burns the most energy of all the things you can do. Thinking burns the most, and it doesn't build muscle if you don't consider the brain as one, metaphorically. Um, but it will
I'm not
make
entirely
you
sure
very
though.
hungry.
I'm not entirely sure though with regards to the energy burning thing. It's something that needs to be looked into because I heard somewhere, I think it ties back to a research paper somewhere
If you
that the increase in human brain size correlates to a decrease in gut length, and that metabolically speaking, the trade-off is supposed to be that the trade-off is more or less equivalent. So that's
Okay,
something
but
that needs to be looked into.
that doesn't change the fact that doing a day's work of
It
intense
burns a lot of
mental,
mental energy.
no, yeah, mental energy, that
Ah,
doing a day,
in that regard, it's
Cookie,
correct.
stop,
Sorry.
that burning a day's working a day's work of hard mental work. I'm sorry, I'm jumbling words now. Um, Working mentally the entire day burns as much energy as working all day on a construction site.
In that regard, definitely, and after you think long and hard, very intensely, you don't have energy to do anything else because
Exactly. And that's
your
not that
brain doesn't only think, it
exactly.
does everything else.
And that means you have not produced anything physically from all of that thought, all of that energy you burned thinking. You have not found a single berry to eat. That's
Hmm.
why the brain shies away from thinking too much, and why you get a headache if you think a lot. That is actually a circuit breaker to ensure that you don't waste too much energy. And some
Yeah.
people, they just ignore that pain, and others don't even have it. And while that is what can bring us further, those people also need some extra support. Otherwise, they'll just starve themselves thinking too much, or get depressed because they think
Yeah.
themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
You're fighting over that line in the sand when I'm out here at the moon looking at Earth, this fragile ecosystem.
Yeah, because that line in the sand is on this side of my food source.
System.
Mm-hmm.
Do you realize Earth's atmosphere is to Earth what the skin of an apple is to an apple in terms of thickness? So I see people trashing the planet, fighting one another.
Yeah, that's currently China and India. Doesn't matter how much we further cripple ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just based on who's on what side of the line in the sand, or who they worship, who they don't worship, or what their skin color is, or where they were born, what language they speak, what accent they have. And I step back, and from orbit, it's ocean, land, clouds.
Mm-hmm.
From the moon, there's Earth suspended there in space. I almost don't want to zoom in on it because people value what they think is true more than what is true. There are objective truths out there, but it's almost as though people fight and argue more vehemently the less evidence there is to support what it is.
Here's the thing, Neil. Think of humanity as different corals on a coral reef. They're all corals. That's what they have in common. But they all, and they move very slowly, they grow very slowly, but once they get in touch with one another, the fewest of them work in symbiosis. They will start land wars. They will start trying to eat one another. They pull their guts out and invert them to eat the other coral, and then will do that to each other, and then the one who holds out the longest is then the one that has survived, while the other has been consumed entirely. It's brutal. Corals are brutal. Very slow. Extremely slow. You need what's it called? In English, when you speed up the footage.
When you speed it up, when you fast forward, when you put something on fast forward,
yeah, we call it in German we call it Zeitraffer. So when you have to, like, you only take a picture every minute or so, and then you play it.
Maybe a time lapse.
Time lapse. Thank you. So you play that in time lapse, you can actually see what's going on. It's brutal and it's disgusting, but it's
and
war.
also
corals.
most people won't care about esoteric ideas when the most important thing at the moment is getting their lunch.
Well, or surviving, going outside and getting back in one piece and having your children in one piece. Because
or
not
taking
all
care of your child, because
it's just not about us being assholes. There are other tribes out there, other cultures out there that are assholes, and they are on a lower level of assholes than we are. We are on the less asshole level. But
there's so many things to...
Yeah.
Sorry.
But we can't be so little assholes that we forget that others are assholes, because then they will over asshole us and we won't be there anymore, and they will just, and then you have humanity as a whole fallen back onto a lower asshole level. Then there's no development. That's a degeneration.
Yeah. And there are so many things to worry about that most people don't have the time to get up to these esoteric ideas. The way you're talking about these esoteric ideas, also with regards to how he's talking about, he's looking at it from above. But okay, he might be able to see things from above, but he also lives on the earth just like us. And he still needs to worry about, even if not all, but most of all of these little things that, well, if we won't address them, we might die.
Well, it's good that he can imagine the outside perspective. That's how
It is.
he thinks. Oh, everyone is the same. Why can't there be harmony? But that's the naive folly of it all. You need to actually truly understand. You only believe you understand humanity. You need to truly understand that all of these groups, what all of these groups drives are, and not just their drives and their wants and needs, but their limitations. How far can they think? Because not all are. This sounds horrible again. Not all are culturally, mentally developed enough, because some cultures prevent a further development. Even if there would be individuals that would be capable of that, the whole of the culture is so backwards that it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
It would only if you have a migration of that culture to somewhere else, where those old backwards ways don't work anymore, and then those people die off, and only those that could think further survive, which is what happened in very, very long ago times, and brought us people who could actually survive winter because they started preparing for it, because African time think cannot prepare for winter, and it doesn't need to, because where it exists there is no winter. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
This is a type of adaptation. And, well, the eugenicists are putting us into the trap of, well, either we figure out how to fight back against what they're doing to us, or we perish. And from the eugenicists' perspective, the psychopaths up at the World Economic Forum and such places, they think, oh well, if we die off and did not survive their trap, their policy, then we deserve to be gone. That's as simple and callous as they think. So we better figure out how to do that. It's an unnecessary test. They do not actually, the eugenicists don't actually know how evolution truly works. That's why they kill off good people all the time. Or maybe they kill off competition. Could be that too.
They also don't know how much effort it took for humanity to survive outside of Africa.
Or maybe they do. Maybe they do. But they don't care. If that is what rather makes me believe that they want to get rid of competition. They only want dumb people to rule over. And they have written enough books where they write exactly that. So the thing is, we need to figure out how to survive their trap that they've set before us, or we're done. And the planet won't care. The planet won't care that there's 8 billion idiots. The planet won't care if the 8 billion idiots are gone. The planet will just continue on with the next species. And then the next species develops higher levels of consciousness, does some stuff, and then maybe they do all of the same stuff again. And hopefully they don't develop socialism. Although they probably will, because it's a natural fallacy to develop.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that tangent.
Yeah. And just one last thing, and before we continue, which is, I think something that would aid his perspective is that the way he's looking at things, he's only looking at them from above. If he looks at things both from above and below, then he on the one hand sees all of these things that he's describing, but on the other hand, he'll also be able to understand why the people are doing what they're doing, because there are all of these other things that need to be, because there are all of these other things to worry about, and they're not trivial. They're real things. Some of them, if you don't worry about them, they will kill you. Some of them, if you don't worry about them, they will greatly hurt you. Some of these things could have various good or bad consequences at various lengths of time, which was a bit of an up in the air statement. But I think that that's what he's missing. That is, one of the things that he's missing that is making him sound so lost here.
On the topic of his perspective, I was happy to hear him say that there is. This is going to sound absurd. I was happy to hear him say that there is I think he said objective truth or objective fact. I can't remember the exact statement, but just an affirmation of objectivity, because I have
Yeah.
heard in academia from professors that I've taken declarations that there isn't objective truth, because the what we the conclusions we've come to through observation can change over time with new observation, leading to different conclusions, and they take that to conclude that there is no objective truth. It's all just subjective based on what we observe.
Madness.
Which, yes, it's absolute madness.
The- the-
So
the-
I'm glad to hear him
that's
say that there is objective truth.
Oh, I
Yeah.
have a more a better higher resolution microscope or telescope. Now I can see things better. That means there's no objective truth because now it measures things differently. What is that insanity?
Also,
absurd.
what you said earlier, what you described that they were saying, um, uh, what they're describing is the perception of the objective truth, which is why science changes all the time, because science is
Yes.
only as good as we can, as our treasury of knowledge and ability to perceive allow us.
I would rather say the only change that science does is that it maps out objective reality more accurately over time. Unless, of course, it's
Yeah.
corrupted by sophists
Yes.
and pretend scientists.
Yeah. But what they
That's
were
the whole point of it.
describing and what they said that they believe and so basically what they were describing basically proves the opposite of what they were trying to say.
Farrad, you were saying?
That's what I'm trying to say.
I don't
Farrad?
remember. Sorry.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
We hear you.
And let's continue.
As they think is true. There's an old saying, if an argument lasts more than 5 minutes, then both sides are wrong. It's true
No.
probably 80.
Yeah, that doesn't work. I'm sorry.
No.
Because a troll is inexhausting. Inexhaustive. Well, you can exhaust a troll, but it can take hours. You can, and I have managed that 3 times. Girls
And
that
there are
didn't,
also-
sorry, I'll try to keep it short. Girls that insist on having DID, dissociative identity disorder, previously called multiple personality disorder, to admit that they're just making it up. But in order to do that, you need to listen very closely, let them talk for at least 3 hours, discuss with them, not indulge them in their point of view, and keep note of their contradictions, because they will completely 100% contradict themselves. And at the end, when you have about 5 to 6 points of massive contradictions, you just recite them back to them, and they will be too tired by that point to still play the "oh, that was my other personality" of that position, because they will eventually take up your position and claim it's theirs and then argue against their own point, trying to trick you to argue their previous point. It's completely maddening. So you need to be attentive to not fall for that. But at the end, when they're exhausted enough, they will admit that, yeah, it's all truly just an excuse to not take responsibility for being wrong. And that takes more than 15 minutes. And the thing with any troll on the internet, the way I see trolls on the internet is, and that this might help Mr. Peterson as well, they perform a public service. They're free sparring partners for sharpening your arguments. They will not run out of that. They will engage in sophistry, of course, because for them it's not about being correct, it's about winning. And they feel like they win when you give up. So you just continue and continue and continue. But in an honest manner. You are the one who plays hard mode. And they will eventually run out of steam. It takes very long. And maybe you need to be an artist to do that, and maybe even enjoy that. But you
And
need to
also
be dispassionate about it. That's the important
There's
part.
also a level of humility needed where, or maybe humility isn't the right word, but if you're like in the Peterson example, if you're engaging with a troll online and you need to, if you don't recognize it's a troll, you need to be able to admit defeat isn't the right term, but like be okay with just I'm trying to word it's a speech issue, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, giving up isn't the right phrase, but like you can't think like you can't get mad and think like if this troll beats me, it's I'm just gonna drop this point because I can't get my words out.
I think we get what you're aiming at.
Okay. I did have something to say.
You don't want the shame of defeat against
someone
someone disingenuous and petty.
Yes, you need to acknowledge that it's a troll who's trying to be disingenuous and petty.
Who's trying to get an emotional reaction out of you, and part of the test against the troll is to keep your cool. That's how you can train your own patience. And maybe stoicism.
Something I really want to bring up about his 5-minute conversation point is that if you're engaging in a topic that for one person is a deeply cemented worldview and you're challenging that worldview, that's a conversation that's going to take more than 5 minutes. But two, if you're trying to, like, if this person is delusional about their worldview, whether it's it could be any number of reasons, but if you're trying to break that down, it's going to, one, take a long time, and two, I need to write notes. I had this point planned out and then I lost it.
That's good. It's a learning by doing thing. You gain experience points in that too. That's how the brain is a muscle. Yeah. See, I lost my thought too now. So it's fine.
Okay.
90% of the time, but it's definitely something to think about.
How have your spiritual and religious beliefs evolved throughout the course of your career based on all that you've come to know about the objective nature of the universe? Has there been an evolution?
It depends what you mean by evolution. I was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
But we were raised basically in a secular household, even though we would go to church every weekend. What I mean by that is we come home, at no time do either of my parents say, don't do that, Jesus is watching. You keep that up, you'll go to hell. Do this because it'll please God. Never was there such a conversation as that in the household. So the household was driven by objective truths or life experience, as would be brought from elders to a next generation. Something that was more common in that generation than in the current generation, because now elders don't know anything about anything. Your kid comes up to you and say, Mommy, Daddy, I want to be a YouTube influencer. And you're saying, what? Go back to school. No, and then they become a YouTube influencer and they out-earn you. So there's...
Yeah, that doesn't work with all jobs in human history. But also the description of the household. The Catholic doesn't automatically mean that everything every day is about God and dogma. So,
The divide is greater than ever before between one generation and the next, for sure. But by the time I turned 8, I found the religious teachings less and less convincing. And so by the time I was 9 when I discovered the universe.
Which I find completely believable, because from my experience with them, they're not taught in a manner that really resonates, makes sense, answers the question of children about how things work. If it's just dogma, then children are more likely to reject them. Not even out of rebellion, but simply, especially when you have intelligent, inquisitive children, they like to ask why. Why? And if the answer is just, well, it's just like that, that doesn't satisfy a child. And that will turn the child away.
It took him until 9 to discover the universe?
Well, we can't all be supertisms. What was the other thing I wanted to say? I will just continue.
Really, the universe discovered me. A first visit to my local planetarium. So yeah, I wouldn't call it an evolution, but
Neil's life-changing visit was to Hayden Planetarium in New York City, part of the American Museum of Natural History. Since 1996, he has served as the director of the planetarium. Well, that's a wonderful life story.
I will say this. You didn't ask this, but it relates. Before I was more recognized, you know, I'd be on an airplane. What do you do? What do you do? Okay. They find out I do astrophysics. Then out come the questions. Okay. Oh, tell me about black holes, relativity, the Big Bang, aliens. Okay. And would always land on God. And I used to give pretty straight, unforgiving answers to that question, to that inquiry. But then I thought that's not fair. There are people whose lives pivot around their religious beliefs and their spirituality. And just because I've been discounting it since I was 8, I shouldn't use that as a force against them. I should at least understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So I systematically acquired religious books of all kinds. So I have the Torah. I have multiple copies of the Quran, Joseph Smith's account that led to the Mormons. I have multiple
I didn't know about
bits of literature from Jehovah's Witnesses, because they'll come to your door and they want to hand you. So I acquired all these books, and I mostly read them. I've skimmed all of them and read some of them with a little more intensity than others. All right. On doing so, that enabled me, empowered me to have more meaningful conversations with people who were religious.
I find that commendable. I wonder if he went out himself to look into forgotten religions, into older mythologies, because that's where it gets interesting. Because when he says, like, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, those are strange sects of Christianity that many Christians will even claim are not Christianity at all anymore. Islam is the odd one out, and that doesn't really help get a deeper comprehension, I would say, especially if you just skim the stuff. If you skim the later stuff, maybe. But my main critique is, after I've started reading more, if you don't understand the creation myth, you don't understand the religion. And because that is everything is downstream from the meanings of that. And especially as a scientist, you should love the creation myth that you find in the Old Testament. Sit down with it for a week, maybe a month, until you really understand what's going on there. Because that is scientific practice, but it's put into metaphor.
Much more meaningful and more informed. That's the key. I don't want to speak about a religion unless I know as much as I can about it. As an academic, that should be what would be true of any subject. You're an academic, you care what's true, not what you think is true, what is true, or what people think. All right? And there's no doubt that religion has been one of the greatest forces operating on civilization, ever since civilization. When you look at as a source of people's behavior, what they eat, like I said, who they sleep with, where they worship, who they worship, all around the world, from animistic native peoples, where there's a spirit energy imbued in the mountain, in the brook, in the wind, to the monotheistic religions, to the polytheistic religions. We don't call them that to put distance between us, but the Greek gods, it was their religion. We call it mythology
Mm-hmm.
It was their religion, the Greek gods, the Roman gods. So I'm
Very
conversational in all of this, so that when someone says, "How do I feel? What do I think?" I can do that without just being obnoxious. And so, and have a meaningful conversation.
I haven't done that.
You haven't?
No, I haven't. But it's such a good idea to do that, especially as someone in my position that does a lot of talking with people and asking questions. But the first thing that sprung to mind was, there was actually two questions that sprung to mind. The first was, how did that change you, reading all those books, outside of you being able to relate with those, well, being able to talk to them in a different way? And the second question, because I've watched Cosmos, I've watched it several times. It's one of me and my partner's favorite things to watch is you going from the very beginnings of time through the universe into where we are.
You gotta love that calendar too.
Oh my
God,
it's my favorite thing. And I try and persuade everybody to watch that. My question was about, because I watched that and I watched how the universe has evolved over time, or at least our understanding of it and how it came to be, is did humans evolve at some point to believe? Are we meant to believe?
Well, so the best way to ask that is, let's go back to the earliest humans we have fossil records of. And we can go back to Neanderthal, for example.
The short answer I would give is that it's about a simplified map of the world. How do things work and why do they work the way they do? Especially when you have limited tools of explanation. That's why the metaphysics of the Greeks was largely nonsense. But it was the best they could do with the tools they had. And that checks out. Now we have better tools. So our maps of existence are better. But for everyday life, we don't need that. We don't need to know how to split the atom, how to measure the distances between stars. For everyday life, we only need to know how to make things hot and where to put our waste. And maybe how to have a roof. Funny that.
Example. Neanderthal is a branch of hominids that went extinct, basically. There's some crossbreeding, and there's Neanderthal DNA in many humans today, but as a branch of the hominids, they went extinct. So
okay, Cookie just told me he's getting really sleepy and he'll be gone in 5 minutes. I would say we'll continue after you go. We'll just continue to 30 minutes, and people in the chat or in the comments can then tell us whether they want us to continue this stream commentary at some later point. And until then, we'll continue.
Neanderthal, then there's Cro-Magnon. We are Homo sapiens coming after Cro-Magnon. And so when you look at
Cro-Magnon is not a scientific term.
The Neanderthal bury their dead with things,
well,
with parts of...
Well, he's a starman, not a bioman.
Yeah, so there are several YouTube channels that really like talking about early humans, notably North O2 and History with Kaylee. They have a whole lot of videos about early humans. There's Kaylee has entire video about the Cro-Magnon, and that the way they look at ancient humans is they look at the tools that they produced and they call them oftentimes cultures describe them as cultures based off of the tools that they left behind or the place where they're from. So for example, you have the Gravettian culture from like 40 to 30,000 years years BCE, where they had a thing with making Venus figures, and they also the men tended to be a bit taller and slender than men that you'd find today, and a bunch of other stuff. Or skipping back far more forward, you have like the bell beaker culture, the corded ware culture, the Neolithic farmers. They're called, actually Neolithic farmers might not be specific enough, but That is how they seem to do things more with regards to the how they describe ancient humans. Now, I did miss a bit of what he said earlier because I am a bit tired, I'll admit. Um, so yeah, I forgot that other point that I wanted to get to, but this is like for your information, and head to those YouTube channels and watch as much as you please if you wish to do so, because you'll get to learn a lot about ancient humans, which is pretty interesting.
Awesome.
Their
Yeah, I'd
life
like to check
of the
that out.
person who died. Now, why would you do that unless you had some belief that there was something more to come for that person? I mean, probably the people who took it to the limit were the Egyptians, all right, for the Egyptian royalty. I mean, they bury you with all kinds of stuff. And in fact, in Greece, I read this. It's not that I researched it, and I'm not a scholar in this, but that when they buried you, they put a coin in your mouth or in your hand, somewhere on your body, so that when you got into Hades, you can tip the ferry boat driver.
Not just in Greece. That custom was in various ways very widespread. Because the whole thing with the River of the Dead that you had to cross in order to get to the Dead Land, that is pretty much everywhere.
Isn't there something similar in the Epic of Gilgamesh?
Too long ago, I need to reread that.
I haven't read it.
But the Finns have it too.
When he gets to Ushnar-Pishtim, the immortal guy and his wife, the Sumerian Noah equivalent.
No, but Ushnar-Pishtim is not beyond a River of the Dead. He is beyond the sea on some island.
You might even say that's the beginning of what it was to be human, when people started thinking that way about dying. I mean, you might even invert the question and say, it's not when did we start? It's we existed in all the ways we know what ourselves to be when that ritual came upon our ancestors.
And the survival benefit in believing?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
As I said, the survival benefit in belief is that you have a simplified worldview that allows you to operate the world. Because it's easier with the simplified metaphors than be terrified by the lightning. It's better to know where have a story where it comes from and what it does until you know better, and then you have a better story that you weave around that.
Yeah. And it helps explain causality as well.
Yeah, and since your children keep asking why is the sea full of salt, you then tell them a story of how King Frodi had this millstone that would mill various things, and then a pirate stole it, and he demanded it mill him salt because salt is very valuable, and then he forgot to turn it off. The ship sank, and now the millstone is still milling salt into the sea, which is not exactly how the story was told, but it's roughly that, and that's why the sea is salty. And the child will be satisfied by that, even though you have absolutely no clue why the sea is salty, but you know that it is.
Yeah. And with that, I will be leaving you guys, and I will see you guys again next time.
Okay.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah. We'll go to the 30-minute mark.
It was my pleasure.
And so that we have covered something at least. I mean, there's a regret section at the end, which is that might be the meat of it, and a few other questions here, but we'll just go straight for the 30-minute mark. Mr. Tyson makes much more sense than last time we saw him.
Pretty sure there's a survival benefit.
He seems a bit more grounded here.
Mm-hmm.
Groupthink. And religion is groupthink, if there ever was. It was, we will all believe this in this way, and we will behave in that way on those occasions, and you will not deviate from it. And part of that...
Yeah, and most of these religions were actually virtue-oriented. It was not about, let's kill everybody who thinks different. there was a lot of respect for each other's gods because they were the gods of other lands. So the Hittites had the great idea to just keep idols of all the gods they came across at home and sacrifice to all of them because, well, in case we have to have a war, it might be good if the other god likes us a little bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, you would just respect the other gods of the other lands, which is something that we see in the Norse tradition, where you have the Aesir, which are the main gods, and then you have the Vanir, which are of a neighboring pantheon, most likely the Finnish, and which have exchanged a few persons, if you will, which is its own long topic. But overall, they weren't all at war because everybody had different gods. That is a gross mischaracterization of history.
Mm-hmm.
Package of beliefs includes statements about the afterlife and how you should behave in this life. Otherwise, you don't go to heaven, you go to hell. I don't think Judaism has a hell, but you're not as rewarded as you'd otherwise be.
Oh, just now Cookie left. He could have explained that part to us.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, a little bit of an example of what Norse religion was actually about. It had a great emphasis on good conduct, on wisdom, on hospitality. There's much less war in it than you might think, because you're primed by media about, oh, it's all about the Vikings. Not at all. Not at all. It's a surprisingly peaceful religion. It's just, it has as much elements of war as any other, and that's not a high level. It's rather a medium to low level. It's about, well, you need to defend yourself in a martial time. The best characters in the Edda of the people, the humans, in the end die because they act virtuous by the rules, and the ones who don't, they lay a trap. And the virtuous characters know it will be a trap, but they have to abide by the rules because they're good people. And you can draw conclusions from that if you wish. But it didn't end well for the bad people either. The Edda ends with Attila the Hun, which is very funny, because there are a couple historical characters named in it. For example, Emperor Augustus in Rome. So you have parts of the stories that can be pointed to several parts in history, because in the end, myth, religion, is metaphorized history. Is that a way to phrase it?
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Now that forms a corpus of beliefs that can be highly binding of a people's. And especially if some other peoples come up and they do other things and you don't understand it, you don't know what it is, and they're a threat.
They're only a threat if they threaten you. It's not just that they I don't know, pull their pants up differently. It's whether they're out for war and out for taking what's yours. That's a problem. And there are some cultures that are primed to do that are primed on raiding others and enslaving others. The Norse wasn't that, the Finnish wasn't that, the Germanic wasn't that, the Celtic wasn't that. The Roman religion wasn't that. The Greek religion wasn't that. The Egyptian wasn't that. The Chinese
Silk Road
wasn't
wouldn't
that.
have existed if every time people encountered another culture, they went, they're different, we have to war with them.
Yeah, instead they made provinces of them and said, yeah, you can keep doing your stuff, but pay the tithe to Rome. And with the Catholic Church, it was more a, yeah, you can keep your festivals, but let's just make them about our God now. At least this was where the nicer times. Then you had mad idiots like Charlemagne. which kind of triggered the whole Lindisfarne thing, which people leave out. They leave out that connection. But that's all another history. But there are other religions that are very out for blood. And the ones that you historically associate with that are not those. You have been fed a distorted history, distorted by omission and distorted by slander. And that is very difficult to clean up when that's all you've known since childhood.
And so you keep them out, you do whatever you can to preserve your traditions relative to theirs. Ultimately, that in its worst manifestation is all-out war. You just kill people who don't believe the way you do. So maybe religion is kind of what defined humans in the fossil record. I mean, like I said, that's an interesting inversion of that question. Not when did humans begin being religious. You define who we are as humans as when religion showed up in the burial grounds of cavemen.
You just talked about us being bound there by certain shared beliefs and ideas.
Yes.
And I think
I think ritual is one of the strongest binding forces of society that we have.
And I think that people are maybe unbinding. If you look at the narrative in society, it's about be your own boss, stand on your own 2 feet. More people are lonely, living alone, having less kids, are working freelance and remotely. So it feels like, in a weird way, we're becoming more independent, and there's somewhat of a cost to that. And actually, my friends that are struggling the most in their lives are those that have the least dependence on a village. So I always wonder if we need to ladder up to the universe, i.e. me, my family, maybe my village, maybe my country, the planet, the universe, in
the metaverse.
Yeah, and like God.
The multiverse. Yeah. So let me just react to that. There have been studies about the psychological effects of this kind of life, basically the social media too early in one's life force that operates. But I don't know. I don't want to be the person who says, in my day, we did it right, and you youngins don't know what you're doing, and you're all going to... I mean...
To a degree, you have to. Because part of being young and rebellious is to test the old conventions, the traditions, the dogma, to see do they hold up. And some of them do, some don't. Because for some we have forgotten the reason, but for some, even if we have forgotten the reason, and for some we know we have reasons, but even the reasons are nonsense. And for some, if we actually do away with them, because we think, oh, they're just outdated stuff, and then really bad consequences follow. Those bad consequences are then the proof that we should uphold those things after all. So we put them back up. And right now, in our civilization, we are at a point where we realize that some, or rather many, of the things that the left has demolished in our culture turned out to be actually pretty vital for stability. And they know that, because they have absolutely no trouble with those things in other cultures that they invite over here. They don't criticize those things in those cultures. They also don't criticize very horrible things that should be done away with in those other cultures, because, well, it's not about those other cultures. It's just about getting rid of us, which is pretty obvious because they keep saying it. It's not a conspiracy if they admit it.
I've seen the films of people, of officials smashing...
Or rather, it's not a theory if they admit that that's what they're doing.
...pinball machines with sledgehammers, saying it will be the death of the next generation, because they're not studying, it's gambling. You see people burning rock and roll records. You know, we've seen this, and I don't want to be that guy. I'd rather be the person that says they're going to create a whole other reality that was not my reality growing up. And I don't know that I can or should value judge that. When they come up in the ranks, they'll be mature adults. They'll figure...
That's the problem. We have a maturity crisis. They are not mature adults. That's the big problem, Neil. That's what you haven't figured out yet, noticed yet. We can't have a proper next reality or culture or whatever if it's not made by adults.
I don't say this as a parent because I'm not a parent, but I do think it is important for parents to let their children, you know, create the lives for themselves that they want. But it's also important for the parents to act as a counterweight for the more extreme measures, or more extreme things that they may be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what the rhythms are of that world. And I will say, however, that if you go far enough back, no one ever traveled anywhere. You'd spend your whole life not going more than 30 miles from your hometown, a couple hundred years back. So now people do actually communicate with countless thousands of people.
Well, except for very, very specific people. Also, you had pilgrimages. Those were ritual. And before even that, we had these giant migration periods. You know how the Indus culture went all the way across the steppes from India to Scandinavia? Man, that's a hell of a trek. I mean, it took very long.
Yeah.
But it was a thing. Lots of stuff happened. Moses Smith and a lot of that is forgotten. Because there was no track record of it, sadly. But to say that people didn't travel, yeah, most didn't. And most even don't today. Because if we look at the genetic distribution maps, even within a country, people tend to remain married around their places of origin, around their places of birth. There is some movement, of course, in and out, into and out of the cities, but mostly we have the same genetic distributions as 500 years ago. Well, of course, the last 10 years have changed that greatly, but ignoring the last 10 years of this and this is how you can also portray maps as yeah, there is a displacement happening, but before those, there's basically no change for 500 years. You were saying?
Oh, to your 500-year comment, I said not for my country. Just making a joke.
Oh yeah, well, the Americas are a bit of an oddity.
People around the world. So it's different. I'm not value judging it, but it's different. And you're exposed to different ideas. Maybe it tribalizes you more, or maybe it softens you. It has the power to do both.
Oh, then we have the whole thing in the Mediterranean that just sparked massive cultural developments. People were constantly traveling by sea. The Greeks had colonies all the way down to India. Mm-hmm. The architecture of the Indian temples with those wonderful statues and that intricate stonework, that stonemasonry, that is taught by Greek stonemasons, by Greek masters who settled in India for a time. People don't know that. They think I mean, why wouldn't you if you don't know that the Indian culture solely developed by itself? But no, it too was informed by outside forces, positively.
What concerns me is because when I post to social
and that was 2,000 years ago.
Social media, I've learned the art of not expressing an opinion because I don't care what your opinion is. I don't care that you have my opinion. What I care about as an educator, and especially as a scientist, is that your opinion is based on objective reality.
Well, that's not what you talked to us a few years ago.
Objective truths. If you have an opinion where the foundation of it is what? Then you're just floating. There's no. And then if you rise to power of laws and legislation, and then you shape a society based on what you think is true or want to be true rather than what is objectively true, that's a recipe for the unraveling of civilization as we know it. So
it's so funny he would say that. Man, I saw that the Neil deGrasse thing was one of the last things I did on this channel. I honestly wish we had finished that, because it's the total contrast to what he's saying now.
Right. I feel like a direct comparison video needs to be made between here and the trigonometry interview.
Yeah, just like I wanted to. This is one of these things that would be really funny if more people would do it, and of course I had done it. With Worf, you could do this within one of his debates, where you can just put him on the left side and the right side of the screen from different moments, and you can just have him argue with himself, and because he will argue against his own points constantly as he flips back and forth. Here you could do it with him in this interview, with Neil in this interview, and Neil in the old interview. And man, somebody kick me that I put in that work. This would be funny. And enlightening. Who knows? But this is why it may be interesting to actually get to the regret part here.
This loneliness bit, I don't know how to comment on that. I don't have the expertise, but I do know that I don't want to be the person on the rocking chair. Get off my lawn, you know.
And I guess I've been trying to figure out if I need to try and make sure my life ladders upwards.
Oh, let me get back to that. Yeah. So it may be that
I think the more interesting question, Neil, is, well, because I don't want to be that person. I'd rather live in a world where people would respect my lawn, and so that I don't have to say that. Because the question is, Neil, would there be a situation where you, no matter how much you don't want to say that, you would say it? You would say, get off my lawn. To whom would you say that? And that is what you must overcome the fear of answering.
The most important role of church wasn't to give a specific recipe for how you pray, or again, who you pray to, or when you pray. Maybe that wasn't its greatest value. Maybe its greatest value was the community that it created.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone comes together and all in one room at the same time. That's not happening today. Like you said, people are less religious today than ever before. There are many people who were once religious would today say they're spiritual, which means they're separated from the rules and regulations that typically dictate how you behave within a religion. But the fact is, you're talking about going upwards, so you have your city, your community, your neighbors, and your church, your synagogue, your mosque, your temple, whatever is the place where you gather with some frequency.
It's not necessarily about that. I mean, it can help, but it depends on what the rule set of your faith is. And if it is overly excessive and minutiae, then you have a control religion. That is probably a bad thing. If you have one that is too lax, which are some of the Protestant denominations, then that is also bad, because you don't actually know why God, why even go to church. If it's just about, is it just about feeling good? That's not religion. That's just a cult. That's just indulgence. That's ego. That's satisfying the id. Good religion is about the superego, the buddhi, which is why it's called Buddhism. And once you've developed that, you can do with less strict rules, because you can self-regulate. The big sets of rules, the minutiae, that's for the less developed people. That's for the immature. That's for the children. But a good religion has a point where it can say, okay, you're developed enough, you don't need to go 100% anymore, because we can now trust you that you can regulate yourself. If you don't have that, your religion just wants you to keep a child in order to control you. Just like a state with an excessive set of laws that all punish your behavior off the charts, that is even quite normal stuff, like not liking your government, for example, is a control state that doesn't want you to grow up. Because a grown-up is an independent an independent person. But we can't have that in a control society, where you have to submit. I'm talking in circles, it's getting late. 30 seconds.
Surely has value, because we need each other. I'm jealous when you drive down the country road and there's a deer just walking around. And I'm thinking, society collapsed. That deer is just fine. The deer was born in the woods, is finding food, is grown up. Whereas I need other people to survive in this world. I don't know how to hunt. I don't know how to...
The deer has a flock.
Mhm.
It kinda needs the others because numbers are protection. Neil, I expect more from you. Bad example.
Yeah.
skin game. I don't know. I like knowing that there's a quart of milk waiting for me on the grocery store and ready to eat cereals. We have an interdependence as never before.
Mm.
And how do we maintain that without scattering to the winds?
Okay, I think that was the part. We are a complex species, Neil. We have moved beyond the point of acting like deer or wolves or elephants. We can do much more complex and amazing things, and that means we specialize. Like the cells of a body. And together we form a greater whole. That's our civilization, but we need to uphold that. And that also means to defend it against the outsiders who, well, you can make up various things of why they hate us. Maybe they just want what we have. But in the end, well, if you don't say get off my lawn, then they will be on your lawn, and they may not be very nice people. There are people I'm happy to be on my lawn, because they're cool people. They don't need to look like me. But they need to be hospitable as I am. It's all about virtue. Not about virtue signaling, because the one who virtue signals usually doesn't have any virtue in him. But yeah. Oh, and then maybe we can end on us having built basically co-evolution with a lot of other life forms. Sheep and cows, they wouldn't really function anymore without us. Most dogs would die out if we went away. The German Shepherd wouldn't. It's so trained on seeing other dogs as wolves that they wouldn't even mate with other breeds, which is really funny. But that's a detail. Most dogs breeds wouldn't survive. We have, and this is a Western society thing. This is our civilization up here. If you look at most other civilizations on the planet, they didn't develop many of these special technologies and interspecies relations. And I'm not talking about the anime. I'm talking about caring for another species in a symbiotic fashion. You may not think of it like that as we raise and then kill and then eat them, but we have enough empathy in us and regards for life that even though we don't go vegan, we still have enough respect and care for the animal, that we want the animal to have a good life up until that point. And that is something that truly distinguishes us from other cultures on the planet who have much less of that, or even none at all. And sometimes that is simply out of necessity, because when you barely survive in the first place, well, animal rights are the least of your concern. These are luxuries we have achieved. And I would like that we can keep this level of luxury, where we can think, where we can have the luxury of thinking about the well-being of our animals. Some that we consider friends and family even. Because that's also something that I don't think many other cultures have. That's what dogs have become. And that's why we take a lot of issue with someone from a culture who doesn't value life and doesn't value dogs to just, well, use a dog as a prop and then use a shock collar because it dares to move after 4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
That is barbaric.
Yeah.
I'd say something that really distinguishes us is that we seem to be born with a one level in the subclass of druid. And I think that's cool. And I think that's really, really cool. I think that's a good point to end on.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Anyone who's if you got to this point, let me know in the comments. Well, whether we should continue. I think I would like to. I want to see where Neil went, so I won't watch it on my own, unless nothing happens.
Yeah, I'm
for a
interested
time.
in continuing this.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, we'll see when the next time we have time will be. Because
yeah, sounds good.
It won't be so. It won't be a regular date. It would just be when we have time.
The time will be when it's time.
Yeah, it will be when it will be. Ha ha ha.
Well, thank you for having me today, Wisp.
Always, always. And good night.
Good night.